I feel like for the majority of people, when they want to learn a new language, especially one that has a different script to the one that they're used to, that it's an immediate daunting thing for them, and for some people maybe it even puts them off. But in all honesty, in my experience learning other scripts, learning a new script in a different language is for the most part a pretty simple and easy thing to do. There are a few exceptions which I'll talk about, but for the majority of world languages, learning their new script is quite simple, and mainly that's because there's typically a finite amount and quite a small amount as well for most world languages. If you look at English, there are 26 letters in the alphabet. If you look at Russian, I believe there are 33 letters in their alphabet. Or if you look at most European languages, they're going to have around 26 to 30 letters depending on which language. Some will have slightly more, some will have slightly less. Even a language like Thai, which as far as I'm aware has 74 characters in their alphabet, even though there are 74 to learn, so that's automatically more than in English or most other European languages, that's still only 74 letters to learn. And once you've learned these 74 characters, you can read or should be able to read the majority of things in that language. The only exceptions to this I can really think of are the obvious Mandarin Chinese, or I guess any Chinese languages in general which uses the Chinese character system, and also Japanese, which has the kanji imported characters from Chinese. Also, I believe Korean apparently uses it, called Hanja, but I've never actually personally seen Korean mixed with Chinese characters, so I'm not quite sure on how much it's actually used in Korean on a daily basis. But if we focus on like the Chinese languages and also on Japanese, the use of many thousands of characters is obviously quite daunting, and that is a really difficult thing to learn. It takes students years upon years to learn all of these different characters because there is just a lot to learn. In Japanese, there are roughly 2,500 kanji to learn for daily use kanji, for you to be able to comfortably use kanji or read kanji on a daily basis. According to a lot of sources, I think it's like a government thing that they've sort of set a certain number. I don't know the exact number, I forget the exact number, but it's 2,000 something. And these are basically your standard kanji from N5, N4, N3, N2, and N1, which are like the Japanese blocks, I guess, for advancing. You learn one set of kanji, then you move on to the next. And these are just the most frequently used kanji. There are still a whole bunch more. Some estimates will claim that there are more than 50,000 characters in Japanese, albeit some of those are old and archaic and not used anymore. There are still a ton of kanji to learn. Even in the book Remembering the Kanji by James Heisig, there are in total 2,200 kanji that he's put in this book to learn. And even in the back, you've just got index, which is just pages upon pages of different kanji that you could look at. And this is just a book to help basically beginners, intermediate people, essentially people learning Japanese, how to learn the kanji, to learn like basic everyday kanji. It is a book this thick, which has about 500 pages to read through in order to help you learn all of the kanji, and it's quite a dense book. It's not for the faint-hearted, and that's what I say. Japanese, and because these characters are also in Chinese languages because they're imported from Chinese, that's why I say Japanese and Chinese are kind of the exception when it comes to the alphabet, or the writing system is just not an easy thing to learn in this situation. These are incredibly hard languages to learn them. I myself have been struggling learning Japanese kanji for quite a long time now, I think 2 years, give or take, and it is just a slow progress thing. I don't stress about it too much. I just learn them slowly over time. I don't know how many I know now, but I know more than I did when I started, and that's the main thing. Japanese also does have two other writing systems, or like alphabets if you want to call them that, which are hiragana and katakana, which are a lot more digestible, which only have 46 characters each, which compared to the 50,000 characters in kanji is a hell of a lot easier to learn. And in fact, I was able to learn both hiragana and katakana maybe within about 2 weeks of just like reading and stuff in them. And so I'm kind of convinced that if I wanted to learn the Arabic script properly, or the Hindi script, or the Cyrillic script, or any other script, that it would probably only take me a few weeks if I really like wanted to. I've looked at Arabic and Hindi and a lot of the other scripts around the world, and so I know a couple characters from a lot of scripts. But for the majority of scripts around the world, it is quite easy to basically learn the characters. And for my personal preference, I would say you would want to pick up a book and you would want to listen to the audio of words and just read along the best you can. You could even use easy languages on YouTube to find, for example, easy Russian or easy Ukrainian or easy Hindi or easy whatever. And you can try and just listen to particular words and break down the word and break down which characters are making certain sounds to then try and learn the alphabet that way, as opposed to just having an alphabet set in front of you and trying to learn isolated characters with isolated sounds, because that is, in my opinion, not the best way to learn an alphabet or a script, and instead you should learn it when you're learning words. If you're learning the word for coffee in Russian, which is kofye, you can look at the F sounding character in there, which is like a line with a couple like circle things around it. I don't really know how else to describe it, but you've got the K and the O and the E, which are quite similar already to what you understand if you're an English speaking person. And then you've just got that other character which is isolated, which makes the F sound, which is used in Russian for basically any sort of foreign word which has that kind of F sound in, to my understanding anyway. And so that's just one example of how you can read a word like kofye and you can go, okay, so that makes like an F sound, cool. So then you start looking at other words and seeing if it continues being consistent with making that F sound, or does it change and does it sound like a f here and a f there? And the sound could change, because in English, for example, we have many letters. I think almost every letter in the English alphabet actually will have at least two different pronunciations. Also in English, we have the whole thing of like letters being silent, whereas other languages are a lot more phonetic. For example, Polish is basically 99% phonetic, and I know Polish is written in basically the same alphabet as the English, which is the Latin script, but Polish has a few extra for like modifications of the vowels and stuff, and it has the w, and it doesn't have the x and the q and whatever, so there's a few modifications. But the way that I learned the Polish way of pronouncing their letters in their alphabet, in their script, is purely by reading and listening, and just over time I just adjusted how letters are meant to sound. That's quite a basic one, however, because like I say, it is basically the same as the English alphabet, give or take a few changes, but obviously some of the letters do change pronunciation. That is essentially like how you would learn any kind of script, in my opinion. Is the best way is just to read a sentence or read words and then try to break down those words and sentences into the sounds and then look at the characters that are making those sounds. The only language that I wanted to speak about, which is kind of in the middle between like the majority of languages and then the really difficult Chinese and Japanese kanji system, is Arabic. Now, the reason that Arabic sticks out to me is because when I was studying Arabic for like a 2-month period, I learned a few of the letters in the alphabet, and then as soon as I saw them joined up together in a word, some of the characters would look completely different. And this is something that, because Arabic is a joined up language, the characters are not like isolated in a word, they're all joined up together, they connect. So characters look different in the alphabet isolated, as opposed to what they do in a word. In this situation, I would kind of say that Arabic is slightly harder than the majority of languages to learn just because of that, because the characters will look different in the alphabet as an isolated singular character, as opposed to when it's written down in a joined up word. But I would say you would still want to learn through reading a word. Like for example, let's take the Arabic word for alcohol, which is alkoholu. It's very similar to the English word, and that's actually because the word alcohol does come from the Arabic language, and so you can look at it written down and you can kind of try to break apart these characters, and you can try and see which ones make a certain sound. It will help as well if you see a repeat character, so you can see if it's repeating the same sound. And just like the f in Russian, you can look at other words in Arabic to see if certain characters make the same sound or if they change pronunciation. And the only thing I'd also say in Arabic is obviously remember they read from right to left, not left to right. And so in this situation, you've got al, which is the first character, which is actually the first line, and then the sort of reversed L part of the character. So to summarize, most languages in the world has quite an easy to learn script, in my opinion. You want to just learn the script naturally through reading in words, in context, and also through listening to native people speaking the language. There are a few languages which this is kind of an exception for, just due to either the characters changing form, like in Arabic, or in the absurd amount of volume of characters like in Chinese languages and in Japanese. But otherwise, the majority of languages around the world will be fairly easy to learn, even at a rudimentary level where you can then start to read in the language from your simple knowledge of the characters and then just build up over time on your knowledge of the alphabet and the characters in that language. I hope this video helped you out. If you did find like other languages a bit daunting and you were wanting to learn another language but you didn't want to necessarily start because, for example, the Arabic script is so crazy, for example, to look at. Once you get to learn a script and once you understand the sounds of the characters, trust me, the language becomes really foreign to quite understandable, quite manageable, and it's a lot easier just to digest everything. I'm not necessarily saying that it's going to be a lot easier to read in, because to be honest, even when you know the alphabet, it still takes time to be able to read quite fluidly in the language, and that's just because you still have to take time to learn the language or learn the writing system properly to process it and to be able to read it like your natural language. But that takes time. To learn the alphabet itself, or to learn the alphabet to a rudimentary level, should only take you a few weeks, and I would really recommend to learn in words, in phrases. If you have any other examples or things that I may have missed in this video, because there are a whole bunch of different writing systems in the world, a whole bunch of different characters, bunch of different alphabets, whatever you want to call them, that surely there are probably going to be others that are similar to Arabic, for example, where they join together and where they sort of look different to the isolated letter, or whatever else. If there's other languages which are similar to the kanji system in the Japanese and Chinese languages, for example, then let me know in the comment section below, because it would be interesting for me to learn about those as well. I'm just drawing upon my own experiences from learning other scripts in other languages, and also just from my knowledge of different languages around the world that I currently know. But from my knowledge, the majority of world languages, especially the majority of like main world languages or popular world languages, are indeed quite contained within normally 30 to 40 characters in that alphabet, with a couple exceptions like Korean and Thai, which has a few more than that, but still quite a manageable amount to learn within a set amount of time. And even though I say it should only take a couple weeks, if it takes you a bit longer because you're a bit slower at learning something, or you're just too busy so you don't have as much time to learn within those 2 weeks, it doesn't matter. As long as you can start to understand a couple letters over time, eventually you'll get there. And that's the main thing. So that's everything I think I wanted to say about scripts in other languages. Essentially, I think for the most part, they're not all that difficult. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch all of you in the next one. Until then, thank you so much. Have a good day, and bye.